Remember, you are 50% hunter and 50% being hunted. The idea is to keep the adversary off balanced by forcing them to always react to you.
And they have gotten over those issues because mentally they signed up for the program and said, I want to see what I'm capable of. I really enjoyed our last podcast. If you guys, for the audience that haven't checked it out, make sure to check it out. Todd and I decided that it would be really good to kind of do, to expand on it and really go through in a little bit more detail. So home invasions are happening more frequently. Things are getting scarier out there, and we want to make a second video for you guys about some actual physical things that you guys can be doing to stay safe. And it's all part of Todd's program. So make sure you guys check it out at thisidids.com. So
IDScitizendefender.com. If you're an instructor, and want to become an affiliate like Kevin is, this is IDS.com.
There you
If
go.
you want to train from home, it's IDScitizendefender.com.
Perfect.
So, so last time we really focused on deterrence, right? Hardening your home, making your home a less attractive target. We talked about some other things that are really important. I think now is the next step is what are the dynamic measures that you can take, right? When you're what's more what's going to be more fluid and dynamic and kinetic, right? But I do want to just do a quick little, it's not a review, but it's a little bit of overlap with understanding what we call the home defense hierarchy.
Okay.
I think it's always important to circle back a little bit, right? The first one is deterrence, which we covered a lot last time. And then early recognition, if there are alarms that you can put out or things that can help you to recognize a threat early on. And so that buys you the time that you need. And then ways that you can slow down the threat. That's also a really important thing to do.
For sure.
That's each one of those could be its own podcast, right? But everyone can kind of look that up on their own while we get into more dynamic measures. And the last one really is evasion. Right. Don't be afraid to evade, especially when you start to get in touch with what the laws are within the use of force within your own home. I know that sounds weird, but
no, it's crazy, especially in Canada, right? I think I told before, and maybe it's come up on the podcast of the one guy in Canada. It was Ontario. Guy broke into his house, and the house owner shot him. And then ended up going to jail or going to court, and everything was going bad. And he was about to go to jail and all this. I think he might have spent like even 6 months there. And then a judge reversed the decision. So it was like that's crazy. That's so crazy to me. And I think that's why it's so important that no matter where you live, you got to know your laws and regulations, right? Because I think he did the right thing, in my opinion. He did what I would have done. Somebody's breaking into the house. I'm giving all verbal commands. I'm making sure that they're not going to harm me or my family because I don't know the status of them, right? And I'm going to have my own. And if that puts me in jail, if my family is safe, well, that's what I'm going to do. What you guys choose to do is up to you. But that's why it's important that you know all these things. You pay attention in these podcasts because they could save your life.
Yeah, and keep you out of jail. The laws for this type of home-based crime are not intuitive, and they may not be obvious. So you need to understand them, and I recommend training them too, not just have an intellectual understanding of them.
Yeah,
and
could be
again,
a fun Friday night with the family.
That's another big.
Yeah.
And having a home security plan, what did your family do? As we talked about a little bit in the last episode, what would your family do? Like, what's the plan? And then practice it. You don't have to practice it all the time. I recommend somewhere between 2 and 4 times a year to make sure that you're practicing that. Because again, you can intellectualize it all you want to, but unless you're putting it into practice, it's probably not going to be very effective. Okay.
Solidify those pathways.
So friendly reminder, the question is, what would you do in the event of an unexpected home invasion? Remember, you have an average of 2 seconds to get to a force multiplier.
That's insane. That's
so either it's insane. So either it's on you
Yeah.
or it's within arm's length of you, arm's reach. But you should know that if it's within arm's reach, chances are good if that home invasion happens, you're going to be springing to your feet and there's going to be an intercept, meaning there's going to be a struggle. You're going to intercept them. And chances are very good that you won't even think to grab your weapon if it's sitting next to you. And
Yeah.
now you have a weapon that's sitting out on a table or something while the struggle's going on. There's probably going to be more than one. So
Wow.
if you're my advice would be, if you are going to take those measures, just carry it. Just have
Yeah.
the force multiplier on you like you always would, and have it integrated into your combatives like you always would.
Yeah.
It's You'd be surprised. There are people watching this who would say, "Oh, I wouldn't forget it. I would grab it." And these things happen all the time, and people forget. Like there are literally stories of hunters who are faced with a who are faced with a, an animal that's going to be violent for them, some type of an
Yeah.
apex predator, and they
Yeah.
forget they have their rifle in their hand.
Yeah. I've heard that
It's a,
story a lot, actually.
it
Yeah.
does happen a lot,
Yeah.
right? It does happen a lot. So we need to make sure that we're keeping it on us. You'd be surprised at the different types of things that can happen under stress.
Yeah. I've
Um,
even, there was just this video I seen the other day in Canada. This guy's out trail hunting. I believe he's looking for bucks or things like that, deer. And a moose comes across him and he lets the moose get like within, basically, it looks like he's within arm's reach of him, right? And he's like, that's enough, move away, move away. And he doesn't have his gun out, doesn't have anything out, but the idiot has his phone. And his phone is recording all this, like, look at this really cool, amazing, beautiful creature. And then the end of the video is the bull moose taking him down to the ground, and then video cuts out.
no,
And you're just like, this is unbelievable, right? It's unbelievable. So I don't know if he's alive. I mean, maybe he is, maybe they found his phone, but like you said, it's the things that you think would be so natural to us, and it's
are
so easy
not.
to watch and judge. But when you put yourself in that moment, you don't know what you're gonna
You're
do.
you're either trained or you're untrained.
Yeah, yeah,
You've either trained yourself for certain things to come out under stress, or you don't,
yeah.
right? And even then, there's no guarantee that that's what's going to come out,
So true.
especially if you're trained incorrectly.
Oh,
A lot of people think they're trained, but they've actually set themselves up for catastrophic failure. That's a whole nother
yeah,
conversation, right?
I would love that
So,
conversation.
so it's important to understand that there's probably going to be some type of physical intercept in a struggle. So
Mhm.
having the skills to be able to use defending in a confined space to your advantage versus your disadvantage. And trust me when I say this is something I specialize in.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to use barriers and confined spaces to your advantage, it will work against you. It's
Mhm.
not something that you want working up against you. You're probably going to be pushing up somebody up against a wall or a counter or something, right? You're
Yeah,
probably going to be pushing you're the one who's pushed up against the wall or counter, right? Remember the story we talked about some episodes past where Anthony Smith, Lionheart Smith, fought with a guy, a home invader within his home for 40
yeah,
minutes under his coffee table while he was in camp. He's a top five UFC light heavyweight, right?
yeah,
And so I'm telling you, like knowing how to use these things. He said it was the hardest fight of his life.
yeah, yeah,
Thing about that, and he's a legit like second, third degree black belt on top of it. I mean, the guy's just a savage, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
he says the hardest fight of his life. Either
yeah.
if you know how to use those things to your advantage, that's exactly what you want.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
look for places. That's a course that we have available, by the way, on idscitizendefender.com, depending in confined spaces. And that'll
Nice.
take you a long way.
Sweet.
So that's a big deal. If you're at home, ask yourself that question. Do you really, could we get people all the time, Kevin could probably attest to this. They're like, oh, I know it. And then we put them in a confined space situation. They're like, oh man, this is a whole entirely different skill.
Yeah,
And those people who train MMA a lot know, cage work is its own skill.
It is.
It's a similar thing. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, well, even as you're just talking right now, I'm like, okay, we do lots of cage work, we do lots of wall work, we're simulating it with cars and things like that. We use the equipment a little bit. And then I'm looking around the room, I'm like, I would fall over the treatment table, I would fall over the couch, right? Once you said kitchen countertop, I was like, man, that changes like so much, right? And then you start seeing all the videos, right? With my photographic memory, you start seeing all the things of when shit hits the fan and it's weird and you're bent over weird. It's like, if you don't have training in that, or if you haven't experienced it, like it makes me want to mess with my students next week. So it'll be great.
Yeah, and it's a block of knives and in drawer. There's stuff around, like
Yeah,
it's a mess, and
it is.
it's a mess. So we want to make sure that we're really comfortable.
Yeah,
We start the majority of our training rounds up against walls and barriers
nice.
because we want to be like this. Like even like I'm not training today because I have an injury, but I'll make sure a good percentage of the rounds I start in my training are against the wall. And I'll put a knife in their hand or a hammer or something. And while I'm carrying, right?
Yeah,
Forgive my voice, or stuff myself in a corner. So I would
yeah.
get really, really comfortable, more comfortable than most people would be, right?
Did you know that that's actually one of the very first videos that I seen of you? Is when it like it piqued my interest of, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. Is you put yourself in a corner, you put your back not against the wall but actually against the attacker. You gave I think he's like a 10 times BJJ like world champion a knife, and then the video said, now we train. And I was like, oh, yeah, I love that. Right. Because I was like, okay. And this guy's posting his failures. I was like, this is something I could get down on. Right. Because it's all about failure. You could do everything right until you don't.
Well, yeah, and when you put yourself in those situations, one, it forces you to be better. It's a forced adaptation. And
Yeah.
everywhere you turn, well, there's a wall there. I can't go that way. There's a
Yeah.
wall there. I can't go that way. Then we'll throw mats and stuff around, just like if stuff fell, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this guy's got a knife, and I have to be able to retain my weapon, and and they're highly skilled, and right. And so all you're forced to do is just use raw principles. And then you realize just how vulnerable you are. Look, there are very few people on earth who are more skilled at this stuff than me.
Mm,
And if I'm failing a lot at it, right? Imagine
yeah.
what it's going to be like for somebody who isn't.
For sure.
And then all the intangibles of being humbled,
Yeah.
right? You realize, oh man, like I'm not like I'm just as vulnerable as everybody else is, and that's a really great benefit too.
I think it's so important, right? And especially, when you hear of high level MMA, UFC fighters, right, who have made the big show, who can do it, you start realizing, wow, this is really competition, and he's phenomenal at competition. But here's somebody off the street, maybe same weight class, I don't know, maybe not. But when you have a fight for your life, people fight differently. They
Oh
fight
yeah.
so much differently. It's not, you're not in a dojo anymore, and yeah, it's pretty cool. So
Whoa! Boom! The self-defense industry is broken, wouldn't you agree? Have you gone from martial art to martial art looking for the responses that you need to have for a self-defense situation? Well, I spent 35 years training in martial arts. I acquired 7 different black belts to find out that when I pressure tested their shit, it didn't work. So what did I do? I had to come up with my own system. Make sure to check it out at budobrothers.com. Build the confidence you need to stay safe.
sweet. Okay, so let's get in it.
The next piece is, how do we want to handle things when we have to go dynamic, right? We've recommended barricading yourself in a room, having family plan, all those things. But what happens, and we don't recommend using solo CQB
Yes,
for all
yes,
the reasons we've already talked about in other episodes, but sometimes you have to.
yeah,
Sometimes there's a portion of the space of your home that's been taken, and a loved one or somebody else is in danger, and you have no choice. You have to take that space. So we're going to be talking about what are some of the core principles with dealing with it. This is not a detailed, in-depth solo CQB lesson.
Yeah.
but what are some core principles that can help you? We know there's more if you're at home, right? We
Yeah.
know there's a lot more to it. Trust me, this is what we do, but we want to give you something, especially in the context of using it within your own home. And the
Yes.
first one is a really great quote from one of the really top CQB guys in the world. His name is Ron Borsch from the Scale Academy. We believe in giving credit where credit is due. So all props to Ron Borsch for this quote, which is excellent. Here's what he says. People need to understand the importance of tactical principles. Most people don't. They think they do. That apply to these situations, such as speed, surprise, and violence of action.
Mm.
They need to learn how to close in and finish the fight with aggression, having and keeping the momentum of the battle on their side. The idea is to keep the adversary off balanced by forcing them to always react to you.
Mm.
That's the idea. Now, that being said, we've seen a lot of people who apply this to the nth degree, meaning they get spazzy
Yeah.
and they're so aggressive and they get so spazzy that they get out of control. So it's really important that you understand to have the balance. It's sort of like driving conditions, right? You might have like Kevin has high performance cars.
Yeah.
Cool. Right. Those that will, but you can only perform with those cars in the right to the max in the right in circumstances. You
Yeah.
don't want to take them out and, redline those vehicles when you got black ice everywhere and there's raining, right? And there's freezing rain and sleet.
Yeah.
You have to be able to move at a speed that is optimal to whatever your conditions are,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And then you have to know how to handle that high performance car. You have to have the skills to do it. Otherwise, that high performance vehicle can become a liability very quickly.
Very, very true, right? And I mean, like, that's why my dad, when we were younger, he's like, it's snowing. He's like, I know you're probably gonna own a rear-wheel drive car, Kevin, because you like driving fast and you like going sideways. He's like, so we're like 12 years old. He's like, jump in the back of the truck and we do donuts in the parking lot. And then he told me, how to do it, how to do it. My brother became a pro drifter for a while, but like I look forward to the winter time to be able to go and push it. I do it in safe environments. I'm not an idiot and do it on the street, right? But if do you know how many times that saved my ass, right? Driving down the highway, all of a sudden hit some
Oh
black
yeah. Oh yeah.
sideways,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And I'm calm in the moment and
100%.
fixing it and
100%.
coming back. But if I didn't spend all those hours training or practicing or having fun, right? I
Yeah.
to be honest, I would have wrecked so many vehicles or possibly been dead.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. So the next part is we're going to talk about the principles of movement to contact,
Mm,
right? And the first one is move quickly but stay in control. The more you do this, you learn what the optimal speed is for the circumstances. You're probably going to have to move past doors, right? This isn't a slow, deliberate search, probably.
yeah.
You're probably going to know where the action is. Now you need to know you need to move past most other doors and danger zones to go to where you need to go to quickly. It's a very different skill set, and we call it dynamic versus deliberate, right?
Okay.
So right
Can I
now we're
just
moving dynamically. Yeah, go ahead.
um I love scenarios. I love kind of reasons why we're doing things, right? So um I'm in my house, right? All of a sudden I hear somebody break and enter. My kids know to barricade themselves in the room. I know to barricade myself in the room. And now what you're saying is I need to move from my room to move my kids into my room to get away. So what you're saying there is like compared to cutting the corner and doing everything super safe and deliberate is now I'm rushing past the door, maybe a little unsafe to me, but because I'm trying to get to my kids, is that what you're saying?
Well, let's get a little bit more specific with
Please.
the circumstances, right? Because I know most people will probably understand what you're talking about, but just in
Yeah.
case there's somebody who doesn't, I'm really careful not to create confusion. So just bear with me. And Kevin's not. He's right. Kevin's right with what he's
No,
saying.
I
Let's just
confuse.
get a little more specific with the circumstances. for some people watching. So let's just say maybe some children's rooms are a safe room. They can safely barricade it and nobody's getting in there. In that case, they're not coming out, right?
Yeah.
And no one's getting in. But there's some cases where you can tell, you can hear that the invasion has entered their room.
Oh,
There's screaming, there's crying, things like that, and you realize they are in immediate danger, and you need to get there right away.
yeah.
I'm not saying not to practice what we call tactical geometry, knowing how to move through that space. We're still working angles, right? We're still applying angles, but we need to do it dynamically instead of deliberately. We're not taking one slice at a time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you see what I'm saying, I'm not like slice, slice, slice. No, there's an angle. I need to swing wide while I'm moving dynamically to get there as quickly as possible. So I have this really nice balance between speed and security. Make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah.
Speed and security. So this is the equation that needs to stay balanced based on what the circumstances are. But I know I need to get there as quickly as possible without getting out of control and compromising myself, because we still have to think about the priority of life, and their life depends on mine. So if I just spaz out and I don't practice and I don't make these movements skillfully
Yeah.
and I just rush in, now I'm dead and so are they.
Yeah.
And so is everybody else. So it's a really weird thing to have to practice that way, but
Yeah.
it's important. It's important to understand. So you're probably going to have to move through danger zones
Yeah.
more quickly or past danger zones more quickly than you would otherwise, or if you had if it was more of a slow, deliberate search.
Yeah.
So
Sense.
the next one is when we're working down hallways. We recommend cheating to the side of the hallway, but stay off the wall.
Yep.
There's a couple of reasons for that. One, if you're brushing up against the wall, you're giving away your position. They can hear you brushing against the wall. And
Yep.
two, oftentimes, if there is engagement in the hallway, it's not uncommon for rounds to skim off the wall. And if you're if you're in the wrong spot, it skims off the wall and it hits you.
Yep.
And there's different types of hallways, right? Commercial hallways, how wide are? There's a lot of variables to that, but I just want to give the basic idea.
Love it.
Okay.
Love it. It's funny
And
because
always,
it's all the things that we were trained in the military to do, and you pick out in movies, you're like, hey, look at they're doing it wrong, right? But nowadays,
yeah,
like at least movie producers are hiring proper people, so you don't see that stuff anymore. But again, it's things that people don't think about, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Then the next one is always be aware of the points of closest cover and concealment. While you're moving, you need to be processing all this information at once. You might take an engagement right away where you're aware, okay, cover, 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 concealment, concealment, concealment. What are the flow lines? Where all of those things, right? Where are the avenues of approach? Where are the exits? All of those things while you're moving. That's why it's so important for you to practice it, because the more you practice these things, the bigger the picture is, right? And then you'll just know where those next move. You always know your first five moves. No matter this happens, I do that. That happens, I do this, right? So that's really important to be aware of what those things are. Okay? And that ties into the next principle is you're gathering intelligence while you're moving. You're listening, right? You're looking, you're smelling, you're looking for what clues are around you that indicates what is happening in your immediate environment. Like, what am I up against here?
Yeah.
What's going on? That's going to really affect your decision making, right?
Yeah.
And then so sometimes you might have to use your senses to stop and listen. So there might be a bunch of screaming and crying and yelling, and then all of a sudden there's a stop in all of that and you're not quite sure where they are. So it can actually save you time sometimes to just stop for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Stop, listen. Okay, now I think I have a better understanding of what's going on. But if you're constantly in motion, it can be difficult to know exactly where and what's going on. It's
Sure.
counterintuitive to think I'm going to stop. Yeah, sometimes it will save you time and you'll go faster if you stop and gather information along the way.
Yeah.
And then engaging the threat. Did you have anything that you want to add to that, Kevin?
No, it's for me, it's an echo, right? It's bringing back, many memories of, all the stuff we did in the military, and just halt, listen, right? And I just
Yeah.
love that I hear it being echoed in a way that civilians can use it. And you're giving great information that maybe people wouldn't actually be privy to. So,
I will say though, excuse me, um, there are some things that are different.
yeah.
In my view, like, and just to in these particular types of situations.
Hmm.
Again, I want to be careful not to get down the rabbit hole too deep here because to be honest, it would be a bit of a disservice. It would be a little bit inappropriate to even just discuss it too deeply because I would want people to get in-person training with this. But one of the things that this is a gross generalization, but one of the things that I've noticed I've trained a lot of military and,
Yeah.
and law in these different types of contexts where a lot of the military, their training has them always taking space. And their MO is to close and kill in
Yes.
most cases, not always, but right.
Yep.
And so they'll just smash it under the room.
Yep.
And so one of the things I like to point out is it's not always our MO, right? It's not it has citizen defenders,
Yeah.
but we like to recommend in most cases when possible doing something called a pass by or fighting from the outside of the room in when at all possible instead of entering the room, especially when you're by yourself. And most of the times in military, you're not entering the room by yourself. You're with a team, right? And so it can be more advantageous, especially if you're more skilled than they are, that you're
Yeah.
fighting from the outside of the room in. So there's
Yeah.
ways of applying and there are ways of doing pass bys that
Yeah.
allows for you to do that and knowing when and how to enter that room to close to contact or whatever the case may be. So I just want to point out that distinction so
Yeah.
that you know how careful I am about conflating concepts.
For sure. For sure.
Because the people that are listening at home, it's their life that's more important to me than me sounding cool.
Yeah. 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 No,
You
I
know,
think it's a wise distinction. And you and I went into quite a bit when we were in person of the differences between the two. I think it's nice for people to realize that high level places are doing this, but as Todd said, the priorities of what they're doing is different. You're not just trying to clear the entire house at sacrifice of your platoon. And it's not like they sacrifice you, but you kind of do if you just crash into a room. But it's how much time do you have? And there's all these different factors taking place where, like you said, if you're by yourself and you have to go
yeah,
and save the kids, right? It's the rule of first aid. You can't save them if you're dead.
right. Priority of life.
Yeah.
And if it's a loved one, your instinct is to be really hyper aggressive.
Yeah.
And you just think it'll just work out to your advantage just because you saw red and you freaked out. One, your performance is going to deteriorate.
Yeah.
But these are the types of skills that really matter. And we've even had people that go train at high speed CQB places a lot and like, hey, we don't recommend crashing the room like that if you're by yourself. And they'll still do it. Then they'll go, oh shit, I've been killed 4 out of 5 times entering the room. Like, that's right. And now you're dead, and so is your loved one. So remember, context dictates strategy. You've heard me say it on this show 1,000 times. So understanding your context is different. So your strategy has to be different. Solo CQB, even two-man CQB is a nightmare.
Oh
A
yeah.
nightmare. Like when I went up to Canada, Toronto, I did a block on two-man CQB because they asked me to do it.
Yeah.
And I and there were some people in there that were fairly skilled, some law enforcement and some SWAT operators and stuff in there too. And
Yeah.
I was illustrating the point. Look, this is really dangerous. I want you to understand. And then about 10 minutes into their practicum, they were like, "Oh man, even with both of us, this is a shit sandwich." I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
getting killed left and right in a sanitary environment where it's fairly predictable, right?
Mhm.
It's really hard to do successfully."
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
that's
just want to
realism.
illustrate that point.
Because of the limitations of live fire and the restrictions of most live fire ranges, we've realized we have to do things differently, and we want to do things differently. We take a principle-based, integrated, and holistic approach to our training that includes pistol craft, weapons-based combatives, as well as soft self-defense skills and education designed specifically with the citizen defender in mind, in a way that can be done anywhere by anyone. So how do we do that? What does that look like? It's not really something I can explain to you. It's something I have to show you. So stick with us, and together, we'll make the world a safer place.
Yeah. And we have to have that. We have to experience that.
Yeah.
This balance between reality and the building of confidence, right? As opposed to just blowing smoke up your ass and always setting people up for success. We want to give them a dose of that reality so that they have a true understanding of what it is they're actually doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is awesome. Awesome.
A few other principles that we can go through here, actually more than a few. Tactical concepts. Remember, you are 50% hunter and 50% being hunted. Right? We want to make sure that we are the aggressor, but may also understand there's probably a good chance there's more than one threat in your home.
Yeah.
And two, like you are also being hunted. So it's not like they're just standing there like a static target in a room and you're just going to enter the room and shoot it.
Yep.
That's the point, or whatever the case may be. Next one, avoid choke points. It's a really big deal.
Yeah.
Or if you have to move through a choke point, move through those choke points as quickly as you possibly can. I'll tell you, having trained a lot in this, and no matter how many times I reiterate this point, and I say, stay out of the door frames. For whatever reason, people will want to stop in the door and they want to fight in the door frames. No matter how many times you say it and train it.
Yeah.
This is a habit that you need to have. You're either getting into the space or you're getting out of the space.
Yeah.
Don't stop in that door. That's a fatal funnel, right?
Do you feel like that's because it's almost like they feel like they're safe because of the frame, or maybe
Yeah.
of the wall, and they're just like, I can go in or out if I stay in the middle? Or
But there's a lot of things that are counterintuitive.
yeah,
And that's one of them. You're stuck now. You're stuck in that door. You're not more safe. You're less safe.
Yeah.
And chances are really good the building materials aren't going to stop anything anyway. That's not right. That's not cover. That's a form of concealment.
Yeah.
So they can just shoot you right through the wall, probably.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting thing that people do. I don't know how else to put it. They just want to gravitate into that door frame. It's a really interesting thing. Remember that distance. Go ahead.
You're going to get to see that when you actually pressure test your stuff and you're failing and you're going force on force. And like you said, you have people that are hunting you, right? Like the amount of times in the military where it's like, okay, we're going to run through the CQB house. Okay, there's going to be live targets in each room, but they're not running around and hunting all the time, right? They're sitting in the room and they're waiting because we're training for Afghanistan, where all of a sudden the guy's going to pull up his AK and shoot it at you as you move into the room because you're trying to clear the rooms, right? Like,
yeah, and to add to that, in this case, your loved one is probably entangled with them.
Yeah.
They're holding on to them. There's a fight. There's a struggle. That's a whole nother skill set with how to deal with that, which I'm not going to cover now because I don't want people to do it unless they're trained to do. But there are things that you can do in those situations. You just have to know how to do it. And that's a whole nother ball of wax. Already talked about speed and surprise, violence of action. Seeking the tactical advantage. And the only way that you know how to use the tactical advantage is if you're training it all the time. You have to know where that you need to have your environment working for you instead of working against you. Sort of like I talked about if you were in a struggle in a confined space. So we always want to seek the tactical advantage. use of cover and concealment. I like to think of this, again, this is a whole nother show all by itself, but I think there's misconceptions around covering concealment, especially cover. In reality, cover is a continuum. It's not, it's going to stop bullets or it's not. There are materials and things that will sort of stop bullets,
Yeah. Yeah.
but not stop them all the way. And that's still better than nothing.
Yeah.
So still seeing this as a gradient, as a continuum is a really, really important thing, especially in and around vehicles.
Yeah.
Okay? I think there's a lot of misunderstandings in the firearms training world and CQB world about cover and concealment. So knowing what that is, seek the high ground when possible. That's going to be a tactical advantage, right?
Yeah.
Accelerated tactical geometry. When you learn how, and that's the last one actually. When you learn how this works, you're constantly seeing your environment as geometry in motion.
Yeah.
You're nodding your head because of all the time that you've had.
Even if I play hide and seek with my son, man, it's so funny. Like the amount of just little habits that I have now and just all those things that I'm trying to teach him and, just be aware of it. Like he's getting good. He's getting good when we're just messing around a little bit. Like we do clearing drills and stuff and we're just messing around in the house, but it's because he loves math, right? So we talk geometry all the time and we play pool and different things like that. And it becomes how you just move. You learn to move through environments differently. So it becomes a part of how you live your life. And it's not like paranoia. It's not like situational awareness. It's not like being alert. It's just something for me, like, I don't know, maybe life is just too boring for me to just walk down the hallway, right? When instead I'm walking down the hallway to the left side because there's a door on the right. I'm peering in the door, but maybe it's because like my son loves jump scaring me all the time, and he's like, I can never jump.
It's because you're weird. It's because you're weird, Kevin.
It's true.
Along those same lines, what you're saying, when I first started teaching this to citizen defenders, one of my training partner, let's just say, was a very high-speed, active operator within the United States. If you can think highest tiers, he was one of those people.
Yeah.
And he got after me. He said, "You shouldn't be teaching people this stuff. This is wrong. This stuff should be reserved for us."
Oh, wow.
And Kevin knows I have no problem speaking truth to perceived authority.
Yes.
And I said, that's cool, man. Yeah, go yourself. Go yourself. I said, you're not thinking clearly. You're indoctrinated. You are indoctrinated. So you don't want me to teach the soccer mom how to safely move through the mall if she has to get herself and her children out of the mall.
Right.
Really? You don't want me to teach them that? You know what else I told him? I said, guess what, man? This is how you're indoctrinated, bro. I said, guess what? In this war, we're on the front lines.
Yeah.
This shit's happening to us, dude.
Yeah.
So you can think that while you're in a secret squirrel place overseas doing your thing, when I love and respect that, you're not going to be here to do that shit. So guess what? We have to know how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
we have to know that we are our own security detail.
Yeah.
We are our own operators. We have to know how to do this stuff. So for those of you out there like, and by the way, I told him, you're no better at this than me.
Yeah.
So don't go getting all crazy.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, you're right. I'm like, yeah. See, you need to be humbled too, dude.
Yeah.
Think.
Well, and it's tough,
I can think for those of you at home, you can think for yourself.
Yeah.
Just because someone has a perceived authority doesn't mean that you need to automatically submit to whatever their fucking opinion is. Because there's a really good chance that they are indoctrinated to a specific mindset that has nothing to do with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's, I know a lot of the guys and they're really good dudes and they get, respectfully, they go through.
Are they really good dudes?
Yeah. I know some really
Are they? Are they do? Well, maybe 20% of them.
It's true. It's true, right?
Statistically, 80% of them are psychopaths. So it's not really That's not in my opinion, that's a fact. So it's not really a group I want to look up to.
I don't doubt that at all, right? But I mean, it's the suffering they go through, the athleticism they need to
Of
have, all,
course.
all of these amazing things that you can respect, right? But they have to almost put themselves on a pedestal to get where they needed to get through the training they needed to do. But what I believe that you did
And
there, you made him empathize with a possibility of maybe his aunt or his mom or his wife or somewhere where it's like
anybody.
immediately I was
Eh,
reminded of the story that you said the other podcast of there's two police officers who were barricaded themselves in their house. They called the cops and the cops didn't show up for 2 days. 2 days. So even if shit was hitting the fan and those two cops are highly trained or at least more trained than the average civilian,
Way
right?
more.
They're still not going to get there. Right. So I agree. I agree. But that's why people like you and me exist in this world is to try and help give us a fighting chance against these criminals who could be training 24/7. They don't have jobs. Their job is to rob people. And if all they're going to do is just train, like my eyes were opened up when I started training police officers more because they're like, do you know how much criminals train? I'm like, what do you mean? Like train? They're like, they train harder than you do, Kevin. They're like, you have a job, you have to do these things. Yes, you get to teach full time, but their whole job is to make sure that they don't get caught and they don't go back to jail if they've already been to jail. But sometimes when they're in jail, they get more training while they're in jail or they build more connections. Like it is a full-time lifestyle choice for some of them, right? And if we're not,
And when you have a predator whose back is against the wall,
yeah,
and
very true.
then they become even more dangerous.
Yes, yes,
Right. So what I want to encourage people to think critically and to think for themselves.
yeah,
And that's the point,
yeah,
right? We go through this life. There's a lot of psychological studies on this, how this works in terms of conforming to a perceived authority,
yes,
right? And and so just because someone has a specific title, they have a background, doesn't mean that they can do more than you.
yeah,
It doesn't mean that they're a better person than you. Like I respect what these groups can do. I
for sure.
respect their abilities and their high performers and all those things. But that doesn't mean they're a good person.
Yeah,
And that doesn't mean that they aren't blinded by their own arrogance, because
yeah,
oftentimes they are,
yeah,
you know, and I just want to make these points. Like anybody who's listening to this right now, you could exercise your expertise to teach these people what you do just as much. Same with Kevin and I. Everybody watching this right now, Kevin and I have a certain, don't like the word expertise, but we have a lot of experience in this area, and so we're talking about it. But if
right,
you're at home, you also have experience and expertise that we could easily be on the reverse end of this thing. We're
for
not
sure.
better. We're
Not
not
at all.
better than you. This is just our niche.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think that's important. And I also, along those same lines, if you find yourself in a situation like this, like these nightmares that we're talking about, just go. Just
yeah,
move forward with absolute certainty that you are prepared to handle this and that you will persevere no matter what.
yeah,
No matter what.
yeah.
Know that you've got this and you can handle it. There's no time for hesitations and what if and I don't know. No, you just go get it done.
Yeah. Well, and that's going to come when you have proper training, right? I mean, that's why I sought you out because in the military or police, like I could join these organizations and work my way into the ERT units and the SWAT units and the tactical units, and all of that is great. But I'm not, and I'm never going to be involved with the government again for my own choices and reasons. But as a civilian, it doesn't mean that I can't train for this, right? I mean, there are groups of, I don't know if I
Of
can
course you
say it
can.
on YouTube, but
Of course you can.
terrorizer cells, right? That are going to make this world a very dangerous place to live. And with that, like that should spark something in people that are natural defenders, that are natural protectors, is we need to step up. We need to level up. Like after I got my 7th black belt and it was in BJJ, I was like, mission complete. I feel pretty good. All my 5 ranges are covered, right? And I was like, this is fantastic. I was like, but in my brain and in my body and in my heart and my soul, I'm like, what's next, Kevin? What are you going to do? Right. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I can continue on in with my Wing Chun journey. I still want to finish my black belt there. I can, continue on in learning all these other martial arts. And then I seen Todd's videos and I was like, man, that's badass. That looks pretty cool. Right. Oh, he's failing. Okay. I like it. We're on the same page. But that's who we attract, Todd, right?
Yeah.
It's not just the 10%, it's that 1%. And if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking that you're outside of the norm of the 90% of people. Can you
Because you are.
yourself? Yeah,
Because you are. You're
very true.
made differently. You've never fit in anywhere a day in your life, right? And that doesn't make you better.
Yeah.
It just makes you different,
Yeah.
right? And that's why Kevin and I are here. Kevin and I are here to provide support for you because the world wants to demonize you. The world wants to disempower you. The world doesn't want you to be what you were made to be.
Yeah.
You were born, right? You were born with a distinction. No matter what you do, no matter where you go, you're always watching over the flock. Always, always. You can't turn that off. It's either what you are or it's what you're not.
Yeah.
And the masses want to be that. And they dip their toe in the water and they dabble. They stick a feather up their butt and they call themselves a chicken, right? And that's not a slight against them. It's just what you're just not that. Like I
Yeah.
dabble in bookkeeping sometimes because I run a business. I'm not a bookkeeper. I'm not made that way.
No.
Like I have to but that isn't like this is this problem with conflation that happens in this industry, right?
Yeah.
You either are or you aren't. And if you are, you can't not do it. If you are, you're still listening to this and you're probably taking notes and you're probably going to listen to it again and you're going to find a way to do it. You're going to find a way to train it and you'll never stop ever.
Yeah.
Ever. You can't help it.
Well, that's it, right? You can't turn it off. And I think, one of the things that I've loved, I've got lots of emails and especially comments about these podcasts. And the people that really appreciate it are the ones that are like us, right? And I've got some pretty cool stories and I'm not going to share them right now, but because I haven't talked to the person, if it's okay if I share their story, but it's, I think it's really important that for us, for people that are like us, that we just keep being us. Don't try and
Yes.
be what society wants us to be. If you are naturally a leader,
Don't try to be what the industry tells you either you should be.
yes, yeah,
Because the industry tries to force you to conform to them too. And there's a reason for that. They have a vested interest in you being conformed to them.
yeah,
And it's almost all bullshit.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I
It's,
mean,
it's
we've talked about so much in the self-defense world with that. We've talked about that in the industry with that. And I mean, I remember like I was a little naive when I came down and seen you, and I was like, oh yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I'm sure what you do is different. I just loved your videos and that you were failing all the time. I was like, yes, this guy gets it. He trains like I train. Put yourself in the shittiest position possible and learn how to fight your way out of it. Cool, let's go. Right. And then I get down there and now I start learning these things and hearing the stories that Todd's telling me and all of these fallacies that I grew up with, that thinking that if I trained in martial arts, I knew self-defense, and I didn't. And now hearing about it in the gunfighting world, it's like, it's so ridiculous. And, getting to know you more and continuing our relationship conversations, these podcasts, it's eye-opening. It's eye-opening, and information is power, knowledge is wisdom. Now let's take it and let's do something with it. And I think, that's why I'm going to continue training in your program. That's why I teach your program, and I'm really looking forward to failing all the time, right? And getting to do some pretty cool
yeah.
stuff that a lot of people wouldn't be privy to that you offer now, right? And at the same point, it's this consistent journey, right? Of
100%.
trying to
And
get
the journey's the best part, right?
it is.
But
Well,
the
it's the
more
most
that
important part.
we want to celebrate failure,
Yeah.
the more that we fail, the more that we succeed.
Yeah.
And that's something that the our society hasn't embraced since we were children. We were punished for failure. I never understood it.
Yeah.
And that's a biological fact for those of you from home who don't know. Like my background is neuropsychology and human performance. My background is the science of skill acquisition and motor learning. Like that's I was in clinical practice for many years, and I coach some of the top and still do some of the top athletes in the world in this area. And I'll tell you that failure is a biological requirement for myelination to occur. Failure is a biological requirement that has to happen consistently in the right way in order to reach a level of unconscious competence and mastery.
Yeah.
I'm not making that up. You can look, I have stacks of, Kevin's seen them. I've got stacks of books all over my house. They're textbooks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So that's not my opinion. And so if you're going to do this, make sure you're doing it where you're failing a lot and you're failing in the right way. And you're always looking for a way to remediate the failure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this stuff that we're talking about, right? This solo CQB stuff that we're talking about, the home defense stuff, that's no different.
Yeah.
You're going to have a high level of failure in order for you to get good at it. And even then, there's no guarantee. There's just a higher probability for success.
Yeah.
I was just on a podcast. I'll probably share it once it comes out, of two guys in the firearms training world who just don't understand. They just don't get it because they don't.
I can't wait for this podcast.
Oh, dude, I was really heavy-handed. Like, I mean, I think they ended it early because I was so.
Oh, I love it. Love it.
But this is something that they don't get because they don't have the opportunity to experience it.
Yeah.
And it's just I just wish that people could the people who have this in them. I wish I could just train them all, or at least point them. I just wish I could train them all, or teach them all, or just point them all in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why we're doing this.
It is.
Right?
It is. Yeah. Yeah. I get a ton of messages all the time like, hey, I'm in, California, right? Like, where do you recommend for me to go train?
Yeah.
Train your stuff. And like, it was weird because it's hard for me to say because I'm a fairly humble guy, right? And I basically have to say now, like, I'm sorry, I don't know of anywhere else like this that teaches and trains the way I do. The closest is IDS. So go check out Todd Fossey and all of his affiliates and where he is. And then the next is, I'm sorry, I'm the only one, right? That's doing my self-defense or my version of self-defense, right? And people are just like, well, that sucks. Like, I want to train. I'm like, well, I have this program online you can train at with BuddhaBrothers.com. And it will give you an idea or an opening, or you can come visit me, or you can pay me to come out to you. And they're like, oh man, I wish this existed everywhere. And like, well, so do I, guys. Like, but that's why we do the videos. That's why, like, today's technology and the podcasts and things, we're doing this because we want to help you. We really do. We want everybody in the world to feel as safe as Todd as I do. And it's so funny that I even say that out loud because I still don't feel safe. All the training and everything
and the more training you have, the more vulnerable
of success. That's it.
The more training you have, the more vulnerable you feel, which is a positive. That's a positive for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I'm actually putting, in a way, it sounds weird, but I'm putting my life in more danger by putting these videos out there. Because now I could be walking down the street and somebody's like, hey, there's a self-defense guy. If we beat him up, we could look cool on social media. Hey, film this while I go do this. And let's go see what this guy.
It happens.
Right?
It happens. Like where I'm at right now at the Minnesota Martial Arts Academy, people will show up here for open mat on Fridays that saw me doing it online. They're like, you're Todd Fossey, right? Yeah, like I want to see if I can get your gun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Let's go. Let's do it. I have nothing to hide. I'm not
Yeah.
worried about it. Maybe you're really good and you can teach me something. That's,
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
um, that works for you. There's something on my mind that I want to say.
Yeah.
I actually said this on the podcast that I was on. I said a lot of things. You'll be interested to hear it, I think. But
I don't think they'll air it, to be honest.
I said, I think I'm just at a place right now that's important that I say out loud the truth and that the truth bows to no one. And the truth is that no one's, in terms of what IDS does, no one is, no one's at the level that we are at. And no one has ever been at the level that we're at. We're at a level that's so high and so sophisticated with what we do that not only do people believe that it's true or that it's real, that regular people can perform at this level.
Yeah.
And it's actually at a higher level than almost anybody else in the world. And
Wow.
even military, even right?
Yeah.
Even government programs.
Yeah.
But it also inspires resistance because as the industry starts to figure out what we're doing, they realize that it exposes them, that they've been telling half truths or no truths or partial truths, or they've been twisting and conflating and making themselves look like something that they're not, that they
Yeah.
can do things that they can't do, or that their students can do things that they can't do. And so it exposes the flaws and deficiencies in the industry all around.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to pretend like that's not true. If you think that I sound arrogant because I say that, that's not a problem for me. But you see Kevin nodding his head. And if I dumb that down and I hide that light under a bushel, then those people that do matter won't come out and train with me. They need to know that that's true, and then they can come discover it for themselves. Then if it's not for them, then that's okay. But I think that's true. If you don't mind me saying, for both of us, Kevin, like I think we should just not try to be bashful and like try to and worry
Yeah.
about what people are going to think about the truth that we say. You
I
know,
mean, I don't. I don't. I was at a recent Filipino martial arts convention. All of us in Alberta get together, we trade and everything like that. And, a good guy, Grandmaster Gil Fantasy of the Rotano system, he's a phenomenal dude. Um, he's like, Kevin, like, you've pissed off a lot of people in Alberta. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, they're all mad at you. I'm like, mad? Are they jealous of my success or this or that? He's like, no, you call out their techniques and you say that their techniques are bullshit and that they shouldn't use it for self-defense. And I'm like, oh, that's it? They're like, yeah. I was like, okay. And he's like, don't you care about that? Don't you want to know who they are? Don't you,
I
you
guess,
want to like,
I guess,
don't fight them? And I'm like, if they have a problem, they can show up to the dojo and we can play around a little and see what happens, right? But it's
yeah,
not that. It's more the fact of like I believe in so much of what I do because I have failed learning
yes,
to do what I do.
yes,
I have
yes,
I have pushed myself to the extreme. My body pays for it. My back pays for it. My brain pays for it. Everything pays for what I've done, but it's not because I'm big and tall. It's not because I'm a skilled martial artist. What I'm most proud of is the fact that I have students right now who have been training my system for only 5 years, and they have so far surpassed what I did in 5 years of training.
100%.
I am more proud of that. And they're not big and they're not strong. They have just taken and really listened to my coaching and they have failed the most. They have bled the most. They have one of my the Buddha Brothers guys, they're going to be on a podcast soon with me. He came and watched one of the tests and, helped out at the end because he's a good fighter, right? And he's like, Kevin, you're creating some fucking men here. He's like, you're taking these boys, right? Like these 16, 17-year-old boys. He's like, dude, they are pushed. Like you push them to the limit. I'm like, I push them to the point and where they want to give up. And then right as they're about to tap or right as they're about to give up, I give them a little bit of space and they think that they're done. And then I keep going. And then I push them a little further because, well, to be honest, okay, this is a cool story. this is what the military did to me, right? I was always on that level where I can push myself and bring myself to a point, but I never knew how far I could really go. I was pushed through black belt tests. I was pushed through everything. So I knew, I had an idea. But when I'm talking about 225 beats a minute heart rate, where like the ambulance and the paramedics are there and like they're like, okay, calm your breathing down, focus on your breathing. Do you know what? We need to put you in a semi-seated position right now because everything's like going over and like you're having a heart attack, like legitimately 225 beats a minute. You're having a heart attack and you can survive and you can stand up in 5 minutes. I would have never pushed myself to that limit. Right. And that's the part about being a good instructor is pushing your students to that limit. I have students that have anxiety issues. I have students that have fear issues about being choked, and they have gotten over those issues. But they have gotten over those issues because mentally they signed up for the program and said, I want to see what I'm capable of. Well, you came to the right place. Right? Because I'm going to push you there. And then there's people who say they want to do it and they quit. And that's fine. That's your journey. That's just, I'm not going to be your Sifu. I'm not going to be your helper on that journey. Right. Um, that's why it was really cool, like hanging out with you and your guys, because I was like, these are my people. These people
100%.
are awesome. Right. We're all here for the same thing. We all want to suffer. Right. But we're all willing
You
to.
want to you want to be happy and fulfilled in life, do hard things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Do hard things, and it sounds counterintuitive, but we go back to failure again.
Yeah.
You're right. The more that you're failing in the right way, the more invincible you become.
Yeah. Well, there's no participation trophies over here. Right? That's for sure, right? But that's like you said, and we've referenced, numerous times of this world is trying to shut us down. And I
There's
don't,
a reason. There's a reason for that.
for sure,
There's a reason for that.
compliance is one.
That's not an accident. Men like us are the biggest threat to the power establishment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And
Because
we're done.
because we say no, we don't go along to get along, we don't conform, and we can form a resistance, even if it's a peaceful one, because we're just not afraid.
And I mean, if you guys don't believe us, like just go look how much Todd's stuff is shadow banned, right? And just go look at how his videos don't do as well as mine, right? I am a little more PC in my approach, right? But
Maybe a lot more.
right, but
Do you
but
see-
that's why, right? And the power here, guys, and if you want proof in this, watch the comments, look how many people like my videos. Yes, I'm more PC in it, and I'm not, yeah. But the power is back in the people. The people are saying, we love your stuff. It's a no BS approach. It's this, that. I can vouch for Todd and say his stuff is the exact same, you guys. It's the exact same. But because he's heavily pistol involved, right? It's the majority of it. They will ban his stuff and prevent it from getting out. I actually had to have meetings with my social media team to be like, guys, I really want Todd on this. And they're like, okay, let's do some test videos with him. And the shit didn't go, guys. It didn't go viral. Things that should have gone viral did not go viral. And there's reasons for it. So we have to be very strategic in our approach. We have to make sure that we do it at the right time when the pendulum is swinging back, when they're not trying to repress us anymore, when they're not trying to prevent, and I don't like the word alpha male, right? Or alpha human, right? It's coming. And the day is coming. The day of reckoning is coming where we as the people will take back what's so important, right? Where we can raise our children in a safe world, not in this crazy world that's taking place. And that's why we're doing this. So I know we went a little
and the
off track.
and the and well, it all applies, right?
It
This
really
this
does.
conversation is important to what we were talking about earlier.
It is.
And dangerous men need to be dangerous, and they need to be dangerous and have that danger under control, right? That's why Jesus said the meek shall inherit the earth, right? And what that means is the definition of meek is somebody who can wield power but they don't abuse it. Literally, the meek is meek is a sheath. Did you know that? The meek is a sheath for a sword,
Well, now I
right?
do
So
because we've been talking.
that's what it means. That's what that means. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're submissive and mild mannered.
Yeah.
If you are, that's okay. But
Yeah.
what it means is someone who's confidently has their sword sheathed, and they have the ability to take it out and use it anytime that they want to, but they choose not to unless they have to.
Yeah.
That's literally when, and Jesus himself said that. That's what he meant when he said the meek shall inherit the earth.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have to get back to the point where real men who have the ability to wield power but refuse to abuse it.
Yeah.
I refuse to abuse whatever power I have, but I will exercise it to the proper proportions that I need to when necessary.
Well, and you and
You
I
know,
both know some really dangerous men and women, right? And they are the nicest people on the planet. And
100%.
you wouldn't even know that they're this dangerous, but that's who we need to be.
You
Imagine
see
how
this
much
guy right here?
safer-
You see this guy right here? You know how kind-hearted and gentle and compassionate this guy is?
Yeah.
And Rose Namajunas, and all the pictures of the people on the wall in here. These are the nicest, most unassuming people you would ever meet. And they're straight up killers. It's like my donkeys,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
It's like
It
my
is.
miniature donkeys. They're the sweetest, kindest pets in the world.
Yeah.
But man, they are bred to protect the flock. And if you're a predator, you have no idea what you're in for. Just ask that hyena.
Right. Oh man, that was so cool. That was so cool.
Yeah.
Well, brother, enlightening as always. Much appreciate you coming on the podcast again, especially I know you took a break there from your training to be able to come here. So make sure to say hi to Greg Nelson for me and all the crew out
I
there.
will.
You're
I'll see him
fantastic.
in just a minute. I'll see him in a
Awesome.
minute.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on.
Awesome.
Okay. We'll see you again, sir. Take care.
Thanks,
Stay
brothers.
safe out there.